Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat, and the big story today is the biggest phase of polling in this election. You'll have over 20 crore people from Assam, Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry voting today. For Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry, this is the first and only phase of polling, while it's Assam's third and final, while Bengal still has 5 more phases to go, so a long haul there for Bengal. Well, let's go across to NDTV's Uma Sudhir. And Uma, the polling has begun, and you have some, high-profile early bird voters as well. Rajni Kant casting his vote. Kamal Hassan, who is contesting this election, also coming in to cast his vote in Kerala. Sridharan and also Swapan Das Gupta in Bengal, all among the early voters. Also, Stalin, hoping for his chance this time, has also arrived at his polling station.
Yes, indeed. A very good morning. Polling has started with good enthusiasm in all these poll-bound states, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Puducherry, the union territory that's under President's rule. All of them, in fact, going for one phase of poll. We are talking about 234 constituencies in Tamil Nadu, 140 in Kerala and about 30 constituencies in Puducherry that are going to polls. First, focus on Tamil Nadu, where, of course, we are having Mr. E. Palniswamy trying to retain power after 10 years of incumbency of the AIADMK, and he is trying to wrest power from him is Mr. M.K. Stalin of the DMK, who in fact is, as you mentioned, going to be going in and voting. Stalin is someone who is contesting from the constituency called Kolathur, which falls within Chennai, and Kolathur is a constituency where, in fact, for the third time, he would be hoping consecutively for the third time to be able to come to power there. And yes, that is a constituency where Mr. Stalin is expected to, in fact, sail through quite smoothly, because this is a constituency, despite being in the opposition, he has looked after the constituency pretty well. He has that has, in fact, a considerable Muslim population. He has the support of the left unions there as well, and people there would also be hoping that perhaps if it becomes the Chief Minister's constituency, they would have more to gain from it, and that's one reason why the enthusiasm among the voters there, largely middle class and lower middle class, who are going to be voting there in big numbers as well. We saw Mr. Stalin's wife, Durga, also campaign there. She doesn't make any campaign speeches, but yes, she was present there asking for votes for her husband and for the party. We also have actor Rajni Kant, in fact, coming in to cast his vote. This is someone who was expected to, in fact, play a big role in the 2021 polls, and he had, in fact, expressed his intent to join politics about 3 years ago, and will he, won't he, has been going on for more than 25 years, but subsequently, because of COVID reasons and because of his health reasons, he said he is going to not be in politics and withdrew from this election. Otherwise, we would have perhaps seen the superstar also in the fray if he had been in the fray. I am also joined now by Sam Daniel from Chennai. Sam, big superstars, of course, coming in to vote, and one of those superstars is Kamal Hassan, who is also the MNM chief, and he is talking about, at a time when the tall leaders like Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha are not there, Kamal Hassan is talking about a new phase of elections and politics in Tamil Nadu. What is the kind of impact that you expect Kamal Hassan's party to make, and also what is the kind of enthusiasm that you're seeing among voters in Tamil Nadu who may be a little tired of the Dravidian parties? They have so far kept away the national parties from coming to power there, but with these new players, what is the kind of enthusiasm you're seeing among people?
That's right. It's the first election after the two icons, Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi, died, and it's in this context Kamal Hassan sees there is a space for parties like him who talk in terms of a new level of politics, new quality of politics, what he calls as new era of people-centric politics, Uma. And as we speak now, Kamal Hassan has cast his vote and is on his way to Coimbatore, his constituency, to oversee the elections there. He has not spoken to the media yet. He says he'll speak in Coimbatore, but we'll have to wait and see what kind of a dent his party would make, particularly in a state which has always moved between the two Dravidian parties, the DMK and the ruling AIADMK here. And different perceptions. Some welcome entry by people like Kamal Hassan, saying they usher in a new breed of politicians, a new breed of politics, a new kind of politics. And some also say they wouldn't want to waste their votes casting to new parties who may not really be successful in terms of capturing power. But some say it's important that voters encourage newcomers like that. So we'll have to wait and see what kind of an impact will Kamal Hassan's M&M make. In the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, they were able to secure around 4% votes. In some urban pockets like Coimbatore, Chennai, they even exceeded 10% votes, and that's what they're hoping at, saying that people vote differently for Lok Sabha and Assembly elections, and they're very confident this time they'll be able to really make it big. In terms of the other rivalry, both the DMK and AIDMK are in a fierce fight in the state. Particularly, the DMK has been out of power for 10 years. It's hoping to capture power, and the DMK, having been in power for 2 consecutive terms, is fighting hard to get a 3rd consecutive term. And in the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, the AIADMK-BJP alliance suffered a near rout, winning just 1 of the 39 seats in the state. And the DMK-Congress alliance swept the polls, winning 38 of the 39 seats, and they hope to continue that kind of a winning stride this time as well. For the AIADMK, although many say there is not much of anti-incumbency, its continuing alliance with the BJP, many look at that as a baggage for the ruling AIADMK, and that could work against it. But the Chief Minister and his Deputy OPS has been justifying their continuing alliance with the BJP, which was in a sense rejected in the 2019 elections, saying that an alliance with the ruling party at the centre helps them to bring in a lot of funds, a lot of developmental projects and welfare measures for Tamil Nadu, which the DMK rejects or opposes, saying that any vote for the AIADMK in Tamil Nadu would be an vote for the BJP. And they say the ruling AIADMK has been arm-twisted and would be ruled or remote controlled by the BJP from the Delhi, which the BJP denies. And in terms of manifestos or policies or promises, we have been seeing a competitive populism between these two Dravidian arch-rivals. The ruling AIADMK promises free washing machines, 1,500 rupees salary for housewives, free tabs and data for students, besides waiver of student loans. On the other hand, you have the DMK promising 1,000 rupee monthly allowance for women, housewives, and also free tabs and free data, besides reduction in fuel price from in terms of 5 rupees per litre in the case of petrol, in terms of diesel 4 rupees, and also a subsidy of 100 rupees for LPG cylinders, while the AIADMK promises free 6 cylinders every time. And this is also the first election where you have the Sasikala team, after her ouster, after her return from jail, serving the 4-year term in the disproportionate assets case. Her nephew is continuing to fight for the second time, launching his AMMK. And last time they were able to shift or split votes meant for AIADMK, and this time too they hope to make it big. And that could be one negative factor for the AIADMK, because its votes could get split, particularly in southern Tamil Nadu, where the Thevar community is quite strong. And although the ruling AIADMK had given 10.5% reservation for the one-year community who are dominant in the northern part of Tamil Nadu, it's having a kind of a backlash in southern Tamil Nadu, particularly among the Thevars, its key vote bank, who think that they've been given a raw deal. That has forced the ruling AIADMK to even talk in terms of saying it's only a temporary measure. Once they capture power, they'll again have a caste-wise enumeration based on which they say they will be giving every such MBC community a kind of a quota in both job and educational admissions. So we'll have to wait and see how this, certainly a fascinating elections, a 5-cornered contest. Besides these 4 players, we also have Director Seeman's Nam Tamilar Katchi, who's yet to make a kind of a dent, but he's been continuously fighting in the last few elections, although they have not been able to make it big or win even a single election. Uma.
Yes, Sam, the AIADMK and the DMK, in fact, by themselves contesting 170 odd seats out of the 234 that we are talking about. The national players, the Congress, in fact, getting to contest 25 seats, and the BJP getting to contest 20 seats in Tamil Nadu. And yes, as you mentioned, players like the Makkal Needhi Mayyam of Kamal Hassan and the AMMK also contesting a sizable number of seats, and it would be interesting to watch how much of the vote they take away and who they damage more in these particular elections as well. Moving on now, to Puducherry, where in fact once again we are talking about 30 seats. This union territory is under President's rule. As we talk about, there are about 324 candidates, over 10 lakh voters in this particular election. We are expecting big turnout there as well. Sam, the run-up to Puducherry elections saw a lot of drama and action as well, with the removal of the incumbent chief minister. In many senses, he had to ultimately resign. And now in the NR Congress alliance, NR Congress-led NDA alliance that we are talking about, the BJP gets to contest as many as 9 seats.
That's right. Again, a very interesting battle in Puducherry, Uma. As you said, the BJP has very negligible presence in neighboring Puducherry as well, just like Tamil Nadu. They could not win even a single seat last time, but they managed to get elected 3 of their members as nominated MLAs. But still, they were able to draw MLAs from the Congress. Some of them joined them, and ultimately that led to the fall of the government. But now, interestingly, BJP has roped in NR Congress as its major ally and is contesting in significant number of seats, and it's hoping to make a dent in Puducherry, hoping to expand its footprint down south in southern India besides Karnataka. We'll have to wait and watch how it will work out on the ground, because Puducherry is an extension of Tamil Nadu, which in a sense, just like Tamil Nadu, has not been accepting BJP. We'll have to wait and see whether BJP running piggy bank on the NR Congress, just like it runs with AIADMK in Tamil Nadu, will work. And it's again a kind of a contest between the Congress DMK alliance and the NR Congress BJP and AIADMK alliance in Puducherry. We also have a few other smaller players, a few rebels who are from NR Congress also fighting against their key allies, their own mother parties in Puducherry. But over the last 5 years, Puducherry witnessed a kind of a continuing tug of war between the Congress government led by Narayanaswamy and the Lieutenant Governor Kiran Bedi, who claimed that she followed the rule book, but the ruling Congress claimed that she was scuttling all the developmental projects of Puducherry just because they claimed, or they alleged, was taking or towing the line of the BJP. Now you have a new governor. We'll have to wait and watch how it will play out, whether NR Congress will be able to help the BJP get more number of seats. But all through the campaign, well, BJP talks in terms of development. If the NR Congress alliance wins there, the Congress DMK alliance has been continuously telling people, claiming that it will be a remote control government by the BJP and it will not be an NR Congress government. Just like in Tamil Nadu, as the DMK claims a vote for the AIADMK will be a vote for BJP, they claimed and any vote for NR Congress would be a vote for the BJP. So fascinating thing. We'll have to wait and watch whether it will help the BJP in any way in the neighbouring union territory. Uma.
Yes, indeed, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Now we move across to Kerala, where, of course, 140 assembly seats is what we are talking about. And we are joined by Sneha Mary Koshi. Sneha, the high-profile BJP candidate from Palakkad, Mr. Sridharan, has already voted. What is the kind of enthusiasm you are seeing among the people?
Well, that's right. In fact, couple of high-profile candidates have voted. Uma, we've had E. Sridharan, of course, the 88-year-old contestant from BJP that BJP hopes to charm more voters with. That, of course, we'll have to see whether it works on the ground. But also Pinarayi Vijayan is on his way. We can see visuals of him voting, reaching the booth. Around 8 o'clock is when Ramesh Chennithala from Haripad, the opposition leader, was also supposed to be voting. We'll get visuals of them shortly. But here, giving you glimpses of what elections during COVID times mean. We've been seeing this across India. You have thermometer, sanitizers, face shields, all of this for each and every voter as they come into the booth. Well, that's really how it is happening on the ground. But Umar, these are crucial elections, 140 seats. And let me tell you, all 3 fronts in Kerala have a very, very difficult uphill challenge before them. One is the left, the CPM-led LDF, which is defending its last bastion in terms of government in India. It's looking to come back to power. It's claiming that it will come back to power. It's riding on development measures that it claims has been unprecedented. It's going ahead and stating several, it's launched an offensive against the central probe agencies for the probes on allegations of corruption, saying they're trying to derail the probe. In fact, the opposition, on the other hand, lots of stakes for them. For example, let's talk about the Congress-led front. The whole campaigns have been led by Rahul Gandhi himself. And the reason being, one, he is the MP from Congress, from Kerala, of course, why not? But also, this is, like Mr. Ramesh Chennithal at one point told NDTV, a do-or-die battle for Congress in Kerala, because this is a government, this is a state which is largely alternated between a left and a Congress-led front in power, and Congress cannot afford to lose the state at this point, considering, one, it has no government in the south of India, two, because, across India, it's just been relegated to just about 4 states being in power. So that being one dynamics. Next comes in BJP. How is the vote share? How many numbers of MLAs? It's got only one MLA at this point in Kerala. What is going to be the impact? Some of the constituencies in Kerala are seeing a very close, tight, triangular battle. What would happen to the vote share? What would this mean to the two prominent or traditional fronts in Kerala? All of these things are some things that are being closely watched. Of course, allegations of corruption, religion and faith, Sabrimala, anti-Sabrimala legislation against women in menstruating years, a legislation that does not allow women to enter Sabrimala in terms of during their menstruating years. That is a promise which is position. How much of this would really find resonance with people in Kerala is something that is being closely watched. 140 seats up for contest.
Yes, indeed, Sneha. We also now have visuals of Mr. Stalin, in fact, coming out of the polling booth where he had gone in to vote. He's, of course, contesting from Kolathur. He is hoping to get elected a third consecutive time from that particular constituency. Even otherwise, Chennai region is largely considered as a DMK bastion. If we still have Sam with us, Sam, Stalin, of course, has been touring the entire state, but Kolathur. Okay. We have seen all the big stars, whether it's the M&M chief, Mr. Kamal Hassan, cinema star, Mr. Rajni Kant, not a politician any longer, nor aspiring to be, and Mr. M.K. Stalin, who is hoping that he can become chief minister after the May 2 results. Back to you now, Gargi in Delhi.
Right, Uma, thanks so much for that. So the single phase polling, single and only phase of polling, they're taking place in Kerala, Tamil Nadu and in Puducherry, and in the northeast in Assam. It is the third and final phase of polls for the remaining 40 of the total 126 seats today. Let's go across to Ratnadeep for more. And Ratnadeep, some big contests in this particular election, also the Bodoland region. Tell us, what has it been like so far? Are people lining up for casting their vote?
That's right. This is going to be a crucial phase. In fact, in all the 40 seats that are going to polls today, polling has started from 7 a.m. and the reports that we are getting in is that across all the 40 seats, the scenes are same. Now, these pictures which we are showing you from Debargaon polling station, it is just outside Kokrajhar in the Bodoland region. Our camera person Sanjay Chakravarti is bringing us these pictures of long queues outside the polling station. Everybody, queuing up to cast their votes. This just goes to show the excitement in people regarding the polls here. Remember, in the last phase there are 40 seats. Usually in these 40 seats always there is high poll turnout, high percentage of turnout of voters, and this time would be no different given the fact the scenes that we are seeing from early morning. Now, very interesting is that 79 lakh voters would be deciding the fate of 337 candidates, including some of the heavyweights, and the most prominent perhaps is Assam's and Northeast's most powerful politician, perhaps the most powerful politician, Himanta Biswa Sharma, and also Cabinet Minister Siddharth Bhattacharjee, Chandra Mohan Patwari, Pramil Brahma here in Kokrajhar, his party colleague and Minister Chandan Brahma from BPF. Also, the state BJP chief Ranjit Das, his fate would be decided in a triangular fight, and the Bhojpuri singing sensation Kalpana Patwari. But all eyes on this phase, because this phase we are witnessing an intense political battle, particularly in Bodoland region. This region, remember, once was disturbed by insurgency and unrest, but the Bodoland Accord, which took place, popularity of its newfound head of the Bodoland.
All right, Ratnadeep, they're reporting from Debargaon in the Bodoland region, which goes to vote today in Assam's final phase, the third and final phase of elections. Well, let's now shift focus to West Bengal. It's the third phase of elections there, but there are 5 more phases to go, Monideepa, and I can just imagine how exhausted all of you reporters are who are covering the Bengal elections. But tell us about today's phase and some very high-profile seats are going to the polls in this particular phase.
That's right, 31 seats and 78 lakh voters, huge numbers already turning out since early this morning to cast their vote. I'm at Baripur constituency at a high school, and look at the turnout here. Women all dressed up in finery come to vote, a festive mood over here, a huge turnout of women as usual in Bengal, and you can imagine that by the end of the day we will have polled in the 80%, which is normal and huge in Bengal. Now 31 seats that are going to the polls this time in this phase, very, very crucial for the Trinamool Congress, because Trinamool has virtually a stranglehold in all these 31 seats. However, the percentages of votes have changed in the last few years, certainly since 2019, when suddenly the BJP saw a spurt in numbers. The BJP suddenly saw much higher percentage of voting in 2019 in these seats, though the number of seats it was ahead in continued to be just 2 out of 31. The rest was all the Trinamool Congress. But in this, since 2019, remember, there has been the Amphan storm here in Bengal, and that has affected the lives of many, many people. Issues like corruption have surfaced. Corruption over compensation, relief, distribution over the Amphan cyclone, and that has certainly had an impact on the way people are thinking and may vote. Plus, Diamond Harbour constituency is a very important constituency. It's in South 24 Parganas district. It's the constituency of Abhishek Banerjee, Mamata Banerjee's nephew, who is kind of the strong man of South 24 Parganas district, which is one of the polling districts, 16 seats going to the polls here. In Diamond Harbour Assembly itself, there has been a change in loyalty. The Trinamool sitting MLA has switched to the BJP, and he is the MLA from Diamond Harbour, not very far from where I am right now. So there have been these switches in loyalties too in this phase of elections, and that is what is going to be crucial in how people decide. So for BJP and Trinamool, a very, very crucial phase indeed.
All right, Moni, thanks so much for joining us with that. So today, the biggest phase in this election for states and one union territory going to the polls. As we said, Bengal still has 5 more phases of elections to go. We'll continue bringing you all the latest right here. Time for us to slip into a short break. We'll be back with more updates. Welcome back. Today is the biggest phase of polling in this election. We're bringing you all the latest developments as Assam, Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry are all voting today. And remember, for Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry, it's today. This is the single phase of elections for them, while for Assam, it's its third and final phase, while Bengal still has 5 more to go. Well, to talk more about these elections, we're joined by Shyam Kanu Mahanta, political commentator who joins us from Assam, Anirban Banerjee, political analyst, someone who supports the Trinamool, and PKD Nambiar, political analyst and someone who supports the BJP. Shamkanu Mahanta, I'd like to come to you first because there have been several controversies in these elections in Assam in the last two phases. You had the issue of the EVMs in a private car. You also had one polling booth where more votes were cast than the people who are there in that particular polling booth. Tell us more about how the elections have been going so far.
So election, there are stray incidents, but as a whole, the election has been peaceful. Like unlike Bengal, Assam has been a peaceful election. Yes, there is an issue of EVM hacking, one or two incidents, but in general, the election has been peaceful. But yes, there's a big fight on the ground. One side is Congress AIDF alliance, another is BJP, AZP, PPL alliance. The first round of 47 seats has gone to BJP, perhaps, as far as our assessment. The second round was even, and this is the third round. This will decide who will rule Assam the next 5 years. This election, this third phase has 40 seats. And where Congress is going likely to do well, they are contesting around 24 seats. And the AIDF, because this is mostly in the minority areas, AIDF is contesting in 16 seats. And they're a formidable proposition. Congress and AIDF together is likely to sweep the major part of Lower Assam. But yes, there are a lot of communal bashing, communal war going on. And BJP, AZP is also likely to give a strong fight. But this third phase will decide whether BJP is going to come to power or not. But election is tight. BJP is an advantage in the first two phases, but this phase will decide who will form the government. But as a whole, very tough election, which was not initially assumed that it will be cakewalk for BJP. The first few, all the opinion polls was heavily favoring towards BJP. But later part, NTCA, something, mobilization, Congress has been able to couple NTCA sentiment, which has allowed them to come into competition. And this alliance with AIDF.
All right, we seem to have lost the line there with Shamkanu. Well, talking about the south, PK Nambiar, if we talk first about Tamil Nadu, Stalin waiting for his turn this time, as it's being said. Also, what is being projected is that a vote for the AIADMK is actually a vote for the BJP, and people are being told that you'll then be, controlled by the center, which is something that people there are not very happy about. Also, a lot of, promises being made to the public, lots of sops being offered to them this time around in this election, which has always been there in Tamil Nadu.
Correct. Gagi, there are primarily the two things which you said. One thing is that it is an untrue thing which is only happening in the national media, that there is something called as a North Indian party and the BJP is untouchable. Not anymore. At least I have travelled across Tamil Nadu in the last few days. That is not at all true, that there is nothing called as an untouchability. Rather, they are getting much more traction than ever. Whether it is, if you have seen, any of the national leaders of BJP has been able to draw a large amount of crowds, which was never in the case of Tamil Nadu in the past. And secondly, it is a cadre-based party which has got a huge cadre all across the state. But yes, I would definitely say there would be some kind of an anti-incumbency against the present government. They do not have some kind of a charismatic leader as compared to Stalin. Of course, Stalin also, if you compare with the Karunanidhi or a Jayalalitha, do stand little far from the kind of charisma they were enjoying. But then, this election is a very crucial election for both DMK and AIDMK, and the national parties, both BJP and Congress, do hold little less relevant as compared to the Dravidian parties. That is the truth. But then, as a combination, if you really look at, I personally feel that DMK may have a little edge over the others. But this is the only time I am seeing there is a little anti-incumbency, despite not having a Jayalalitha as a chief minister. 10 years in power is huge, and 10 years in power and not having that kind of an anti-incumbency means a lot for the current government. Now, going back to from Tamil Nadu to the Kerala, if you really ask me, Kerala is also seeing a very, very different kind of an election this time around as compared to generally. It is all 5 years after another government comes in. Since you asked me about the whole of South, so the Kerala elections are going to be very different this time around. There is a huge traction for the BJP. A large amount of educated or the people who matters a lot are joining BJP like a Metro Man, Sridharan or
well, actually, LDF is hoping to, change history by staying on for another term, and they're really gunning for it. And in fact, the Congress is facing issues with, infighting, etc., different, factions over there. And BJP is not considered such a, big role, even though they put a lot of attention. They've given a lot of attention, a lot of rallies in Kerala.
16% is the vote share of the BJP in the last in 2019.
They had one seat.
But that doesn't matter. So there was almost 13 places they came as number 2, and this time around there will be many more places. There will be this is a tight fight. There is a triangular fight in more than 55 seats. So that is a lot. So the Kerala dynamics is that if you divide Kerala into 3 parts, that is the northern Kerala that has got the LDF in the major part, and in the mid, the real Malabar area, which has got a Muslim domination, that is Muslim League, which is really, in fact, if you really ask me, Gargi, that the more than the Congress, the Muslim League is going to be the real power center. You will be, if Congress comes into power this time around, Muslim League would be the prominent party, and mostly either close to a number 2, or otherwise even if Muslim League becoming number 1 is something maybe on May 2nd, we both can have a discussion on that. I think Congress everywhere in the south is also becoming a number 2 party is something saddening. And most importantly, imagine Congress, Rahul Gandhi was campaigning. He's a master campaigner this time around in Kerala. I don't know why he was doing so, because Kerala is one state where
he is a member of parliament from Kerala, but yes, the left and Congress fighting a bitter battle there in Kerala. I have to go across to Anirban as well, and Anirban, interestingly, in Bengal, the Congress and the left fighting together over there. This is always the unusual sort of cases that we see across states and central politics, but it's the 3rd phase in Bengal, and we still have 5 more phases to go. Everybody's already seeming quite exhausted, at least reporters on the ground. I can just imagine what it's like for all the politicians, and Mamata Banerjee is still going strong. You have the Prime Minister, you have ministers, Home Minister also going to Bengal. Tell us about the election, how it's looking there.
Well, one thing is that at this time of this corona pandemic, the Election Commission should not have followed the BJP's diktat and broken down the polls in 8 phases. I mean, the corona is seeing an unprecedented boom, and because of the elections, the entire administration is concentrated on the elections, and the healthcare system is suffering. The West Bengal government, with its limited resources, had pretty well managed the corona pandemic in 2020. But in this recent surge, due to these elections, the political rallies, etc., it's getting very bad. The numbers are rising once again. That's one thing. The Election Commission should not have done this. Number 2, the BJP top leaders like Mr. JP Nadda just yesterday had to cancel 2 big public meetings in Srirampur, which is in Hooghly district, which is going into polls today as well, a few of the seats, because there were not enough people attending his meeting. And this has been a regular scene for the top BJP leaders like Mr. JP Nadda, Mr. Dilip Ghosh, Mr. Adityanath, the UP Chief Minister. And even after this, actually, if the BJP scores a good number in the elections, there will be many reasons to doubt the result, because when you don't have any people at your rallies or your public meetings and you still are scoring a big number in the poll results, that is something there is a lot to suspect about. So we have to put a very close eye to how...
Nambiar, allow him to actually counter that. Yes, you wanted to come in here?
I think, come on, this is something maybe in the early morning, somebody who is telling absolute lies on the face, which we are all seeing, that the kind of crowd, all the top senior BJP leaders were drawing in. It's an unprecedented kind of the crowds are coming for all the places in Bengal. We have seen it, whether it is for the Amit Shah or the Prime Minister Modi, or for that matter to anybody else.
Yes, of course, for the Prime Minister and Home Minister, we have seen massive crowds there.
Massive crowd all across. And what is the
But also, you don't want to talk about the EVMs or election commission in that manner. But I agree, Anirban, about the concern regarding COVID spreading, and with this election you're spread out in this manner, you're going to have more gatherings. And yes, the entire government are putting its attention there. Yes, Anirban.
The cancellation of public meetings. Just a minute, sir. The cancellation of public meetings of Mr. Adityanath, Mr. Nadda, Mr. Dilip Ghosh have made big headlines in the newspapers. I mean, Mr. Nambiar might be ignorant about the Bengal newspapers, but he should look up some.
All right, well, yes.
Can I come?
One final word, yes.
I think the number of, if that is the benchmark, the number of programs which were cancelled of the chief minister is astonishing. It has never happened anywhere in the country. Ever in any.
You have no idea.
Number two, if at all Mr. Banerjee was talking about, even if he is already admitting, if the BJP, he is already saying that even if the BJP gets much more seats in this upcoming election, that clearly says that Mr. Banerjee is losing in Bengal. And
all right, we just have to leave it there. I'm so sorry, Shamkanu, I couldn't come back to you, and we're completely out of time. But thank you all for joining us this morning. And remember, continue watching NDTV. We'll bring you all the latest updates on the elections taking place, the largest phase of this particular election. On the other side of this break, we'll get you the latest COVID news. Stay with us. Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat, and today is the big day in this election. It's the biggest phase of polling. Over 20 crore people from Assam, Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry all casting their vote today. In fact, brisk polling taking place since the morning. And remember, for the south, for Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry, this is the single phase of elections there, while in Assam it's their third and final, and Bengal has 5 more phases to go. We'll be going across to all our reporters, Uma, Sam, Sneha and Monideepa. Ratnadeep will be joining us with all the very latest on the polling, on polling day. Well, if we talk about the people who've already cast their votes, there have been some high-profile early bird voters, Rajni, Kant, Kamal Hassan, Sridharan in Kerala, also Swapan Das Gupta, Stalin have all cast their vote. Let's go across to Uma Sudhir, who will take us through this election in the south. And Uma, in Tamil Nadu, Stalin really waiting for his turn to be in charge of the state. We don't know what kind of a role Kamal Hassan's new party is going to play there. In Kerala, you have the left hoping to create history and staying on for another term, while in Puducherry, of course, you had the dramatic fall of the Congress-led government there and elections taking place under President's rule.
Yes, indeed, Gargi, very, very fascinating election indeed, and happening during COVID times, when we are talking about huge crowds that we saw for literally all meetings, at least in Tamil Nadu. That's the kind of scenario that we saw, and we are talking about this at a time when COVID numbers are rising in all the states, in fact, across the country, and we are talking about being in the middle of another COVID wave. Yes, it is a one-phase polling in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, as well as Puducherry, 234 assembly constituencies in Tamil Nadu. We also have the Kanyakumari bypoll, the Lok Sabha bypoll, but that was necessitated by the sitting MP's death there, in fact, because of COVID, and subsequently the bypoll now taking place. And then you have, of course, Kerala, where 140 seats, and Puducherry 30 seats. In Tamil Nadu, of course, we are talking about a scenario where you don't have the tall leaders, Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi, and you are talking about a 5-cornered contest. And the DMK Plus alliance led by Mr. M.K. Stalin is hoping that after sitting for 10 years in the opposition, he will be able to become chief minister. But Mr. Edappadi Palaniswamy, who in fact became almost, should I say, an accidentally a chief minister, he's someone who has fought hard and in fact has fought this election in a manner that people were quite surprised about his staying power. Even after becoming chief minister in 2017, there are a lot of skeptics, and subsequently he has fought this election in such a manner. The AIA-DMK alliance, of course, has 170 odd seats that are being fought by the AIADMK, 20 seats allotted to the BJP. You have the Patali Makkal Katchi, which is considered a largely one-year based party that is going to be fighting 23 seats. Of course, they came into the alliance after the Chief Minister made that, passed that bill in the Assembly, allowing for 10.5% internal quota for the one-year community, which he had hoped will help the ruling party and the alliance. Of course, its effects and after effects we can discuss, and people have been talking about a counter-polarization, a counter-consolidation of the other castes, which could affect the AIADMK. And of course, you have others like the Tamil Congress on that side. And on the DMK side, you have DMK once again contesting 170 plus seats, and you have the Congress with 25 seats as well, the MDMK, CPI, CPM, and Virudhulai VCK party, all of them getting 6 seats each, and a few more to others. We are now joined by Sam Daniel from Mylapore in Chennai. Sam, this election happening in the middle of a second wave of COVID pandemic. Is the enthusiasm really dampened because of that? Of course, we saw huge crowds during campaign meetings. That could be something that could be attributed to the kind of money power that was used. But voting per se, enthusiasm, are people showing that much of enthusiasm, or are they afraid to come into the polling booths?
Uma, in terms of precautions, yes, the Election Commission has made it a point to make wearing of mask mandatory, but the official percentage is yet to come from the poll panel. But from what we see, we come to you from the SIT College, part of the Mylapore constituency. You see a steady stream of voters coming, and in fact, in the earlier booth we could even see voters jostling to come and vote. That's the kind of enthusiasm. So it appears that the fear of a second wave of the pandemic or the risk of contracting the virus has not really deterred voters from coming to the polling booths to cast their vote, to exercise their franchise. And in Tamil Nadu, in 2019, the DMK Congress had swept the polls, winning 38 of the 39 seats. And after being in opposition for 10 years, they hope to continue that winning stride. And they are quite confident, taking into account that the AIADMK BJP alliance, which suffered a near rout at that time, continued to have that alliance, because at that time it was seen as a clear vote against the BJP, and since the ruling party is continuing their tie-up with the BJP, they hope that will work in their favor. But the ruling AIADMK is taking on issues of dynastic politics. They point fingers at the DMK and also point fingers at many other allegations in the past, particularly the speech made by former Telecom Minister A. Raja referring to motherhood and women in particular in the context of the birth of Chief Minister EPS and his mother. That's something the ruling AIADMK is exploiting. So they also hope that their justification that an alliance with the BJP helps them to bring development and many central schemes to Tamil Nadu will work in favor of them. And it's going to be an exciting five-cornered contest. As you said, it's the first election after Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi passed away. And also in terms of the way these two parties are wooing voters with competitive populism. The AIADMK promising free washing machine, 1,500 monthly salary for women. The DMK promising cut in fuel price in terms of 5 rupees for petrol and 4 rupees for diesel, and subsidized cooking gas cylinder, besides waiver of farm loans, waiver of educational loans. And also the new entrants like M&M promising up to 3,000 rupees salary for housewives and free computers with internet for all the homes. All these things are making these elections exciting. All the two new factors: one, since the ouster of Sasikala from the AIADMK, since the return from jail after serving that sentence in the disproportionate assets case, her nephew TTV Dinakaran continues to fight separately against the AIADMK and the DMK. Whether this will lead to any split of votes meant for the AIADMK, that's something we'll have to wait and watch. Last time, at least in 6 seats, he was able to influence the votes the AIADMK received at that point in time. Also, new players like Kamal Hassan, they secured around 4% in 2019 as Lok Sabha polls, and in urban pockets it went up to 10%. And he also hopes that there is space for him, particularly after the death of Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha. Lastly, smaller players like NTK, Nam Tamlar Katchi by Seaman, also they're quite optimistic also, although they have not been able to make a dent, significant dent in elections earlier so far. Uma.
Yes, indeed. We call it a five-cornered contest, but the main contest remains between the two main alliances, the Dravidian Party alliances, the DMK Plus and the AIA DMK Plus. This is an election where you have reported that 428 crore rupees worth of cash and jewelry was, or rather valuables, were seized by the Election Commission. But this has been a high-stakes election, Sam. You know, what are you hearing about the kind of money flow? Because even otherwise, Tamil Nadu has been seen as quite notorious in the kind of spending that happens during elections. Very difficult to establish these things, but one has been hearing about a lot of other methods also being used. The more digital money in in digital India, the transfers happening that way. What are you hearing about allegations like that?
Well, Election Commission has on record told that of the 400 crore plus seizure they've made, around 225 crore accounts for cash seizure across Tamil Nadu since the election notifications were made, Uma. And they talk in terms of two clear ways of political parties purchasing votes. One is distribution of cash. There are areas where sometimes officers say they hear reports of the electricity supply being cut off in the night time, paving way for easy distribution of money. And also use of technology and wallet platforms like be it Paytm or Google Pay, that's also increasingly being used. But authorities say it's largely cash distribution, although nothing has been proved yet. But based on the complaints they receive from public, election officials say these two are the common methods used, but largely cash. And in terms of Google Pay or other platforms, officials say although a small percentage of money is being transferred this way, they say political parties are also wary of not getting caught in terms of their digital footprint through these platforms. So they're very cautious about that, but largely cash. And also some reports of things like tokens being issued for people to collect the money later, and also gifts from dhotis, saris to other forms of electronic gadgets or recharge of their mobile prepaid mobile phones. All these are innovative ways for which Tamil Nadu has been notorious for many years. But this time, yes, digital transfer also has made a kind of a foray in this, what many call as purchase of vote scam.
Yes, indeed, Sam. Innovations keeping up with the kind of checks that the Election Commission is putting in place. Moving now to Puducherry, where we are talking about 30 assembly seats. And in the run-up to these elections, quite a bit of political drama that happened with President's rule being imposed in this union territory. Sam, tell us about the kind of battles that we are going to see in Puducherry, where in fact BJP, which is a party which contested all 30 seats and was not able to keep its deposit in as many as 29, is getting to contest in as many as 9 seats as part of the NR Congress-led alliance.
That's right. Although the BJP, as you said, doesn't have any significant presence in Puducherry, just like Tamil Nadu, Umar, after the fall of the Congress government led by Narayanaswamy, they managed to forge an alliance with NR Congress, the N. Rangasamy-led NR Congress, and according to that tie-up, the NR Congress will contest in 16 seats, the BJP gets to contest in 9 seats and 5 seats for AIADMK. And by riding piggyback on NR Congress, the BJP hopes they'll be able to make a dent. They'll be able to win more seats this time in the union territory. Interestingly, they have not announced the chief minister candidate yet, although NR Congress in its resolution has named him as the chief ministerial candidate. And on the other side, you have the Congress, DMK and CPI VCK alliance. The Congress contesting in 16 seats, the DMK 15 seats, the DMK contesting in 13 seats, and VCK and CPI contesting in 1 seat each. In fact, the resignation or exit of a few MLAs from the Congress and few of them joining the BJP led to the fall of the government. And all through the 5 years, the Narayanaswamy government had a kind of a tug of war with the then Lieutenant Governor Kiran Bedi, who claimed she followed the rule book, but Narayanaswamy claimed she scuttled all the development projects of Puducherry, joining hands with the central government, the BJP at the center, as he alleged. And now we have a new governor. The BJP is trying to push the argument that if the NR Congress BJP alliance is voted to power, it will pave way for more funds for the Union Territory, more development for Union Territory. And the DMK Congress alliance arguing that any vote for the NR Congress or the BJP alliance would be paving way for a remote control government from Delhi controlling the affairs in Puducherry. So we'll have to wait and see whether Puducherry will follow the Tamil Nadu route, the way it rejected the BJP in 2019, or will its alliance with the NR Congress help it to expand its footprint in southern Tamil Nadu? That's something we'll have to wait and watch.
Yes, indeed, Sam. Similar pitch of arguments that the opposition party has been using in both Tamil Nadu as well as in Puducherry. Moving now to Kerala, where of course you have the LDF government, Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan, hoping to retain power in the state at a time when the UDF and also Mr. Rahul Gandhi, being the MP from Kerala, from Wayanad itself, has been making those trips to Kerala and campaigning quite hard. And the BJP, of course, also looking at the state as a possible area where they can make bigger inroads. Sneha Merikoshi brings us this report.
Couple of high-profile candidates have voted. Uma, we've had E. Sridharan, of course, the 88-year-old contestant from BJP that BJP hopes to charm more voters with. That, of course, we'll have to see whether it works on the ground. But also Pinarayi Vijayan is on his way. We can see visuals of him voting, reaching the booth. Around 8 o'clock is when Ramesh Chennithala from Haripad, the opposition leader, was also supposed to be voting. We'll get visuals of them shortly. But here, giving you glimpses of what elections during COVID times mean. We've been seeing this across India. You have thermometer, sanitizers, face shields, all of this for each and every voter as they come into the booth. Well, that's really how it is happening on the ground. But Umar, these are crucial elections, 140 seats. And let me tell you, all three fronts in Kerala have a very, very difficult uphill challenge before them. One is the left, the CPM-led LDF, which is defending its last bastion in terms government in India. It's looking to come back to power. It's claiming that it will come back to power. It's riding on development measures that it claims has been unprecedented. It's going ahead and stating several, it's launched an offensive against the central probe agencies for the probes on allegations of corruption, saying they're trying to derail the probe. In fact, the opposition, on the other hand, lots of stakes for them. For example, let's talk about the Congress-led front. The whole campaigns have been led by Rahul Gandhi himself. And the reason being, one, he is the MP from Congress, from Kerala, of course, Wayanad. But also, this is, like Mr. Ramesh Chennithala at one point told NDTV, a do-or-die battle for Congress in Kerala, because this is a government, this is a state which is largely alternated between a left and a Congress-led front in power, and Congress cannot afford to lose the state at this point, considering, one, it has no government in the south of India, two, because, across India, it's just been relegated to just about 4 states being in power. So that being one dynamics. Next comes in BJP. How is the vote share? How many numbers of MLAs? It's got only one MLA at this point in Kerala. What is going to be the impact? Some of the constituencies in Kerala are seeing a very close, tight, triangular battle. What would happen to the vote share? What would this mean to the two prominent or traditional fronts in Kerala? All of these things are some things that are being closely watched.
Thank you, Sneha, for that report. Over to you, back to you, Gargi, for the rest of the election news.
Right, Uman, interesting in Kerala, it's a big bitter fight between the left and the Congress, while we're going across to Bengal now, where the left and Congress are fighting the election together. So let's focus on Bengal, which is in the 3rd phase of polling today, though there are 5 more phases to go in this very, very long election. Bengal has 31 seats going to polls, polling taking place in 3 districts of Hooghly, Howrah and South 24 Parganas. 16 of the 31 seats polling today are in South 24 Parganas district. The election Election Commission has put in place a huge security bandobast for free and fair polling. Around 700 companies of security forces are deployed in this phase of elections. Well, let's go across to Monideepa for more on the elections in Bengal. And Moni, what are the reports coming in of the polling so far? And in this particular election, some interesting contests. We have Swapan Das Gupta also fighting for his seat in this phase of elections.
That's right, but let me just run you through a set of incidents that are being reported from across the three districts, starting with Diamond Harbour itself, where we are hearing in the Diamond Harbour seat where the sitting Trinamool MLA has switched over to the BJP. Over there are reports of people not being allowed to go to vote from certain villages. Those complaints are being probed. Also from Goghat in Hooghly district, which is where Tarakeshwar is, by the way, a 50-year-old woman was murdered in the dead of night last night, and her son, a BJP supporter, has just filed a police complaint naming some 10 or 12 Trinamool workers who have murdered her. That apparently is causing some tension over there. Further back in South 24 Parganas, there is a case in Mograhat West, I believe, where an ISF candidate, he sat on dharna for a while outside a booth this morning, protesting that his poll agent was not being allowed. But perhaps the most startling case has come out of Ulubedia in Howrah, where a sector officer has been suspended because 4 EVM machines and VVPATs which were in his charge, they were found in the house of a Trinamool leader, and he really had no logical explanation for how these EVM machines got into the house of the Trinamool leaders. That is something that created a huge stir. Local people came and gheraued the sector officer, the Trinamool leader's house in Ulubedia, and CRPF had to be rushed to the area to ensure there was no untoward incident over there. So incidents like these being reported from across all the three districts where polling is taking place. Now this is 31 seats up for grabs. This is also, these 31 seats are dominated by the Trinamool in 2016 and in 2019. Out of 31, the Trinamool had sway over 29. But the voting percentage of the BJP shot up from 2016 to 2019 to something like 37%, and that is which is why this phase of polling is certainly a battleground between the two sides fighting it out. Also, as you heard, ISF, which is part of the Samyukta Front, Congress, Left and ISF, these candidates are also in the fight this time, and a third front is also joining battle this phase, and it's a bitter fight. Reports of trouble from sporadic trouble from different places, huge security bandobast in place to ensure nothing goes out of hand.
All right, Moni, thanks so much for joining us there. So the third phase of elections in West Bengal, and on the other side of this break now we're going to get to the latest from Assam, which is also in the third and final phase of its elections. In fact, Ratnadeep joining us from Assam, and Ratnadeep, the remaining 40 seats going to the polls today. Tell us, what are the reports coming in so far? And it's the third and final phase, and elections this time around in Assam have been quite peaceful.
That's right. Elections have been quite peaceful. In fact, this morning from 7 o'clock, the election started, and till this point of time, there is no report of any untoward incident. However, there have been reports of EVM malfunctioning, and in few places, EVMs had to be replaced. We are coming to you from the Balajan area outside Kokrajhar in the Bodoland region. You can see the long queues, particularly the participation of women is very encouraging. Remember, out of the 337 candidates whose fate are being decided by the electorate, there are 25 women candidates also. This is going to be an intense battle in the Bodoland region, given the fact that if you see in 2016, in these 40 seats, BJP and its allies won 23 of those seats. But 8 seats were contributed by BPF, which used to be an ally of the BJP, but now part of the Congress-led Mahajot. Also, apart from the Bodoland region, in the lower Assam, the Bengali Muslim votes is a key factor. in previous elections, the votes used to get divided between the Congress and the AIUDF. This time, there is a chance of consolidation of the Muslim votes given the fact that the AIUDF and the Congress has come together. And you can see there is a lot of excitement among people. There are youngsters here. We'd like to talk to one of them. Bhai sahab, kya naam hai aapka?
हरिमोहन राय.
इस तरह क्या नाम है?
हरिमोहन राय.
हरिमोहन जी, अगर कोकराझार की बात करें और तो पहले ऐसा था कि उग्रवाद की समस्या थी, राइट्स होते थे, अब बहुत शांति आ गई है.
अभी तो शांत है, अभी फिलहाल अभी बहुत शांत है, अभी वोट चल रहा है अच्छे से. अभी देखो फिलहाल अभी इतना आदमी है अभी वोट देने के लिए.
उम्मीद क्या है आप लोगों की?
उम्मीद क्या बोलेगा. अभी देखो नया सरकार आएगा तो नया होगा, जो पहले वाला है पहले भी होगा, ऐसा ही होगा, अच्छा होगा.
मगर
जो भी आएगा
काटे की टक्कर है. यहाँ पे बीपीएफ है, वहाँ पे बीजेपी.
नहीं, ये तो मेरे को मालूम नहीं है.
So there you are, people want that the government which comes to power next in Assam should work more for them, and that has been the voice everywhere. Now watchers believe that while the first phase of the polling, the BJP and allies had an advantage, this phase the Congress and its Mahajot allies might have an advantage, but what Bodoland decides would be very crucial if the elections goes on to become a close fight. Perhaps these 8 seats in the Bodoland region, which were in previous election with the BJP-led alliance, and if these seats BPF can perform well or retain their seats, then it might be a very close fight.
Right, Ratnadeep, thanks so much for joining us from there. And Ratnadeep, the reporting on the Assam elections is the third and final phase today. We'll slip into a short break and return with more. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Battle of the States, it's the largest phase of polling today, in which you have 4 states and 1 union territory going to the polls. You have Assam, West Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry. People casting their votes since early in the morning. Well, to talk more about these elections, we're joined by S.G. Surya, spokesperson of the BJP in Tamil Nadu, and Shikha Mukherjee, senior journalist, joining us from Kolkata, from Bengal there. S.G. Surya, first to you, tell us about what you're hearing from the ground. This is just the single phase of elections in Tamil Nadu, and we're hearing there is an anti-incumbency factor in place. Stalin hoping to finally get his turn in leading the state, and you also have Kamal Hassan's party in the fray.
Good morning. Just completed my voting. So I see everybody is very skeptical about whether there is an anti-incumbency here. That is the problem. Nobody is able to predict anything because we do not have 2 of the staunchest political figures, Ms. Jayalalitha and Mr. Karunanidhi. This is the first election we are facing without them. And secondly, like you rightly said, Kamal Hassan is a new player, and there is TTV Dinakaran's AMMK and Nam Tamilar Seeman. So it's like almost 4 or 5 thronged contest. So everybody is very skeptical about how this is going over. But as far as we are concerned, we are very confident that we will come back for the 3rd consecutive term. And one interesting point I would like to notice, so there have been 10,000 buses that were plying from Chennai to other parts of the state for the last 3 days to ensure people get out to vote. So even if it is on a weekend, I don't see so many people going back. But this time it was very surprising to see all the buses filled and everybody is going to vote. So probably by the evening we'll know the trend. But as far as our alliance is concerned, we are very hopeful of coming back.
All right, there have been several controversies as well. I'll come back to you for that. But Shikha Mukherjee, this is the 3rd phase of polling in Bengal in what's a very, very long election. 5 more phases to go. Already some reports coming in, of some sort of trouble in some booths about how EVM machines and some VVPATs have been found in a Trinamool leader's residence. But tell us about what you're hearing.
Well, what I am hearing is that in some of the constituencies, there is a lot of tension and voters are feeling intimidated. And that really is the correct position, because this issue about the EVMs and VVPAT machines, this really is a failure of the Election Commission. What were these devices doing in other people's homes? Why were they not kept in safe custody? These are questions that the Election Commission must answer. And it's sort of strange that with all the heavy security that's there in West Bengal at this point in time, the huge bandobast, why did this happen? So that apart, what is important is that there is tension, there is a keen contest, and this for the Trinamool Congress is the battleground. Nandigram was the mother of all battles, but this is the battleground for the Trinamool Congress because it is defending its own turf against the BJP at this point in time, and in these 31 seats, the Trinamool has almost total dominance, and that is something that they would like to retain, because if they need to get way beyond the halfway mark, then they need each one of these seats to vote in their own favor, and they're working very hard, and the tension and the clashes are sort of evidence of the kind of rivalry that is playing out on the ground.
All right, SD Surya, if we come back to Tamil Nadu, and if we talk about, there's been several controversies ahead of the elections there. There have been complaints to the Election Commission. There have been allegations against the way the Income Tax Department has been acting and, raiding several DMK leaders.
This is an allegation that comes every time attributing to the ruling party. But honestly speaking, there were raids from all the parties, ADMK, BJP, several candidates were raided. So I don't think that holds any true. But the only problem with DMK is DMK's own General Secretary, Mr. Durai Murugan, had wept in a public meeting saying that our own party people, because of the factionalism, are passing on the inputs to the Income Tax Department, which should be stopped. So on 3 instances, there are, strong proof that their own party members, because of factionalism, pass on the information to the Income Tax Departments. So that is why DMK's very own General Secretary had to come out and record in public and plead their members not to do such things to, betray the party. So that is the fact. When they themselves are fighting, I don't think Income Tax Department can help.
All right, Shikha Mukherjee, you're talking about tension, in several seats there in Bengal. Also, we're hearing reports, from both sides about how certain meetings here in Delhi, of course, we see the big rallies taking place, but also how some BJP leaders had to cancel meetings, though the BJP claims that even Mamata Banerjee is not drawing big crowds. If you could tell us about that.
Yeah, well, Mr. Nadda's meeting got cancelled. That's the point, and it happened in Hooghly. And that is important because there are 8 seats going to the polls in Hooghly today. And Hooghly is a district where the BJP has one parliamentary candidate, Lakshmi Chatterjee. In the remaining areas that are going to the polls today, it's really Abhishek Banerjee and others whose constituencies and their hold on the voters is being tested. But the fact that people are missing is something that has been dogging the BJP over and over again. This is not the first meeting of the BJP that's been cancelled. Mr. Amit Shah's meeting was cancelled because there weren't enough people. And frankly, there seems to be a disconnect somewhere in the rural areas in particular between the BJP's top leadership, BJP itself, and the voting population in those places. The reason is very simple. The BJP has been a hugely urban phenomenon. It is working in the rural areas on the basis of anti-incumbency, but its own organizational strength in the rural areas is not as deep-rooted as it needs to be. To get the kind of massive support, it needs to oust the Trinamool Congress from its position of dominance. And this is going to play out in constituencies like Tarakeshwar, where Shakundas Gupta is contesting. He's a newcomer, he's very little experience of electoral politics. And then there is Arambagh, where Sujata Mondal is contesting on the Trinamool ticket. She is the wife of BJP's Bishnupur MP, Soumitra Khan, and their marriage is on the rocks because of their political differences. So there is a lot of here is, there are different people with different reasons, and the BJP is having to struggle with this as well.
All right, the politics coming in the way of marriages as well. Thank you so much, Shikha Mukherjee and SG Surya for joining us this morning. And it's a big day, as we said. It's the largest phase of polling in this election, with 4 states, 1 union territory going to the polls. Time for us to slip into a short break. We'll be back with more. Stay with us.